I'm glad you're here live with us too. Hey, Elizabeth,
Hi, Charles.
how are you? It's been a long time.
I know, it's good to see you.
Yeah, everything's like pre-COVID, post-COVID now, or we're still in it, but so much has changed.
Turn you up a little bit. I know I mentioned this via text, but this is my very first Instagram live video. So thanks for having me, and thank you all for joining.
Thanks so much. Yeah, no, we're so glad you're here. Let me just kind of introduce you a little bit for those folks who don't know you. I'll introduce myself first. I'm Tweak. I'm the director of Beneath the Tangles, and Elizabeth Maxwell is joining me today. So Elizabeth is an actress of TV, film, and also, of course, anime and gaming. So I guess some of my favorite roles of yours are Bishamon in Noragami and Urbosa in Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. But today the timing is perfect because you're in the cast of Fruits Basket, and it's in its final season. We've got about 3 episodes down on Funimation. You play Arisa, who is one of Toru's two close girlfriends, and your character's developing or not developing relationship with Kurano is really kind
I know,
of
right?
I know, right? Yeah, so but it's playing a really pivotal role, right? At the end of last season and into this one. So anyway, glad you're here with us. And everyone, if you aren't following Elizabeth, please follow her on Instagram. She posts things that I think are different from a lot of voice actors. Just a lot of things are going on with your life. Sometimes personal things. I'm always happy to see photos of your dad. That's fun. Things of that nature. So yeah, definitely. Um, all right. I want to chat a little bit about your roles and everything. But let me first mention our drinks. Um,
Did we choose the same one,
oh, do
Charles?
we? There we go. I don't know if I should say this, but I was telling the audience here that the Torres is just a little too sweet for me. Like I turned down the sweetness, you can turn down the sugar level. I was like, oh, 70% will still be really sweet, but it's a little much. So I went with a little bit bitter with the tea. But anyway, we want to thank Kung Fu Tea, and they've got these 3 different fruits basket flavors. They've got it for a couple more weeks here. So Yuki's Noble Taro Slush, Toru's Strawberry Blush Slush, and Kyo's Mango Madness. I saw your reviews of them on TikTok, so that's another way you can follow Elizabeth over on TikTok. Those are a lot of fun. All right, so why don't we talk about?
Oh, and I
Oh,
was
go
going to
ahead.
say, I didn't realize this, Charles, at first until I looked into it a little more. But when you buy one of these, there's a QR
All
code
right.
on the top. And if you scan that, you guys get a free month of Funimation Premium Plus subscription, which is an awesome deal. So if you are not yet, if you've been wanting to watch Fruits Basket and you don't have a Funimation account, do yourself a favor, scan this QR code and get that free month because Fruits Basket is worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as everyone's kind of realized over the last year is that Funimation is just grabbing all the anime. I've, there's so many series on there. So yeah, definitely check it out. Let's talk a little bit about Fruits Basket. Tell us about, what your experience has been like voicing over these past 3 seasons now.
Yeah, and I'll kind of roll in. I took a look at some of the questions that you guys posted both on Twitter and Instagram, and somebody had asked if I was familiar with Fruits Basket before I was brought in to do Arisa for the 2019 version. And I'd heard of Fruits Basket before because it's such an iconic anime. Like I feel like it's impossible to work in this industry and not have heard like something wonderful about it. But I hadn't watched it before because usually like the kind of like slice of life or like high school romance harem type shows are not my thing. I've always been more like the fantasy, the, real hard drama um, animes. And so I hadn't watched it. And I feel a million times luckier today to be in the show than I did when I was first cast. And I felt lucky when I was first cast because I knew it was a great show.
Hey, so can you hear me, Elizabeth? Can you hear me? You're okay. So I think you're muted, Elizabeth. So everyone out there, can you hear me? Okay, so it looks like you have audio problems, Elizabeth. All right, so Elizabeth will come back. In the meantime, if you do have some questions, just let us know. She'll be right back, and then we'll get her back on. So, um, yeah, so she'll be back on. So I've been seeing some of your favorite roles by Elizabeth. If you'll list them down here, that would be great. I totally forgot that she does Ymir, which is the first role I asked her about. Okay, here she is. Hopefully we got the sound problems fixed. Okay, well, I'm usually the one with the sound problem, so I'm glad at least you can hear me. She'll be back, and there we go. I can hear you. I think I can hear
Sorry
you.
about that, guys.
All right.
I got a phone call, and I think that disrupted the whole audio chain. So sorry about that. Did you hear anything that I said about Fruits Basket?
Most portion of it. You're very thankful for it more now so than you were when you first got it.
Yeah, because I've become such a fan of the show, even apart from working on it. And I just think it is a true work of art. And that's why I was saying that after having like watched it, I feel even more lucky than I did when I was first cast because I now know what an incredible show. And I mean, honestly, Arisa is such an awesome character. Like showing her character arc, particularly in season 2, was pretty fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Season 1. Oh my gosh, I've completely lost track of time.
Speaking of, so you didn't watch or read Fruits Basket before you jumped in. One of the questions from our audience, though, was, have you read any of the original manga or light novels that your characters come from? Is that something you usually do when you get a series?
I personally haven't. The only manga that I've read much of was D. Gray Man.
Oh.
And it was honestly because a friend had it and like loaned it to me. I love manga. I'm such a huge book nerd. And there are so many like fantasy authors and series that I'm already like heavily invested in. And my free time is so limited that because I'm a voice actor, I tend to watch my like anime content as opposed to read it. Yeah. And then use my reading time to stay up with like my favorite fantasy authors. So
I wonder, are you reading anything right now? Any fantasy books right now?
Yeah, I am.
What are you reading?
So at the moment, I am working my way through. I think I don't know why I always can't remember if it's Joe or Joel Abercrombie. Okay. And I forget the name of the series as a whole, but the name of the first book is called. Oh my God, where is it? Why am I blanking on it? The Blade Itself.
Yes. I am looking it up. There's, I guess with fantasy novels, you wouldn't have much time for anything else because they really suck you in, and sometimes they're very, very long, and then you're into that world, So yeah, I love fantasy. I think we talked before about that was kind of your thing growing up. I mean, you're you are into the reading and the fantasy works, and you've got that nerd in you. That's that's great. I think people like that. That we can see ourselves in you a little bit. But Getting back to anime though, everyone is down below is asking about RWBY, and I think we probably should talk about that last episode and everything that happened. So Winter was really front and center in the episode 8 finale. Did you? We had a couple of questions about this. Did you know what was going to happen in that, or how far in advance did you know what was going to happen in that final episode? Like,
So,
do you know before the season starts what's going to eventually happen with her?
so it's completely up to the discretion of the writers. Sometimes they will choose to tell me like little tidbits, like in a general sense
Mm-hmm.
of what's going to happen, like in the next volume or later in the volume. But on the whole, it's a surprise to me until I get the scripts like the night before my recording. And I think that's partially because the writers are working so furiously right up to when we record, and like lots of changes and edits happen. But also, I mean, I think that they probably don't want you sitting with that knowledge for too long.
Yeah.
But it's different every volume and different with every set of writers. So I knew in a very vague sense before I recorded that volume that Winter was going to become the Winter Maiden, but that was about it.
Okay.
Like all the other details were a surprise to me.
I see. I was going to specifically ask you that if you knew that, so that how you got there was interesting. I thought the last episode you had to. So I thought it was interesting that you as Winter you had like scenes of sadness, despair, anger. There's so much going on. When you're recording those scenes, is it difficult to switch from one mode to the other? Is it just after all these years, you just turn it on? Okay, I've got to be intense in this one. I have to be more of her kind of noble tone in this scene.
Well, some of that it is helped by being able to like kind of thoroughly read and spend some time with the scripts before I actually get in the booth, because it does allow me to kind of like do some prep work and so forth. It can be difficult because when you're watching the show, a lot of those scenes, they're several minutes long, but when we're recording in the booth, like we can get through a scene like that, depending on how many like actual lines that I have. So a lot of times with that, you're really kind of collaborating and leaning on your director to help like set that emotional tone and the scene, and kind of like help you set up the moments and the hours before, so that you can be emotionally in the right place for the actual scene itself. But yeah, it can be a bit of a challenge to kind of like make yourself go to a really extreme emotional place very quickly. But I think the fact that I have been working on this show for as long as I have helps. The fact that I have like genuinely strong connections with like Kara, who voices Weiss, makes it a lot easier to get emotional for those scenes. So I have a lot of help in that way.
And so what happens with Winter in Volume 9?
You know better than that, Charles.
Yes, we're cutting. Okay. All right.
Also, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't tell you even if I could.
I know it.
Because I like my job and I want to keep it.
That would be good. So I thought this was an interesting question from Austin through our website. If Winter, I may pronounce her name wrong, and Sei from Persona 5 met, do you think they would get along?
Sai. So you're very close.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great question. I think that they would actually, like, because my first question, or I was first thinking, well, like, if you have two kind of like alpha females, like, are they going to kind of like butt heads? But I do think that they would actually get along, because they're both, imperfect individuals. that are struggling through some of their own challenges. But I do believe that both of them truly, truly believe in justice and, you know, creating a better world than the one they walked into. And I do think that there would be a lot of like mutual respect there.
Oh, good, good. And the person who asked that question is here with us, so that worked out really nicely. What here's one more question from Ruby, and if anyone else has any questions from Ruby, we can ask them right now as well. But Captain Rusty from your Twitter account asks what your favorite moment was in Volume 8.
Mm. Mm. I might amend this later on because I haven't had a chance to go back and watch Volume 8 as recently as I would like. But there were a couple that stood out. Finally telling Ironwood off was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like Winter like really kind of came into her own truth, and you know, it's like in earlier volumes or earlier episodes, she kind of, I feel like, overcame a lot of her issues with her real biological father. And then this was kind of like the last step of like getting over or getting out from underneath like the influence of a father figure.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big one for me. And then as many people have commented, and somebody asked like what was like the most challenging or my favorite line,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of goes along with this from volume 8. But the moment when Weiss fell and like Winter realized that she couldn't get to her in time and that she was losing her, and it was just like that scream of her name, that was very poignant for me, not just emotionally, but also as a voice actor. The monologues are easy, you know, like the dialogue is easy, like you get into a flow. It's the stuff where it's just like a reaction or one word. Those are oftentimes
Mm-hmm.
the hardest things
Yeah.
because you have to pack so much meaning and emotion into such a short utterance. So, and I mean that was one of those lines that like I absolutely like had tears in my eyes in the booth as I was like putting myself in the real situation of like losing somebody that I cared about that much.
How does a director in that situation help you to achieve, what you need to achieve in that moment?
For me, a lot of it comes in like kind of helping refresh and remind me like what is going on, like what happened in the scene before, what happened just a minute before this scene, you know, like just kind of like setting the tone. And then some of it is just kind of like recognizing when I'm in the zone and just kind of stepping
Mm-hmm.
back and not overly interfering and just giving me like the time and the space that I need to go where I need to go internally and then produce,
So
you
you
know?
don't like to be directed. Just you just just let you go, right? Is that what you're
No,
saying?
I do like to be directed, but
No.
it's also nice to not feel like when you've worked with a director for as long as I have, like I've worked with Carrie for so many years now, and it's like I feel like we know each other well enough as a director and an actor that he can kind of tell when I just need a little bit of like time to go inside, and he knows that. And so I don't feel pressure like I need to like hurry
Mm-hmm.
up my process.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very like it creates a space where I can just relax into the moment instead of having to worry like, are they going to wonder what I'm doing? Are they going to think that I can't get there, you know?
Feels like a good director has to be flexible in that way and see what the moment calls for. So that makes a lot of sense. Have you ever wanted to direct yourself?
You know, I'm not saying that I won't at some point, but thus far the urge has not strongly struck me. Um, I I enjoy being an actor so much,
Mm-hmm.
and at this point, like, I feel like that's where I'm happiest. And directors have to, like, I have the utmost respect for directors. They have to wear so many hats and juggle so many things. And I selfishly kind of like just being able to revel in my like emotional story.
Well, let's answer one more RWBY question and then kind of move on to some of your other roles. And I'm gonna ask this one that was just asked below by Sailor Artemis Cosplay. That was easy.
Oh yeah, I remember you.
There you go. How do you feel about the development between Winter and Ironwood's dynamic? They're so complex, and you and Jason Rose play them so well.
I I love their dynamic as well. And I think Jason Rose has done such a phenomenal job in playing a really complicated character, because I do feel like Ironwood is potentially like a forward projection of what Winter could have potentially become in time, or if she had taken a different path. Like, I think they share a lot of similarities, and Winter wasn't forced into the position that Ironwood was, of bearing the weight of those responsibilities initially. And I think that's a really heavy burden, and one that people don't always give Ironwood credit for, when you're responsible for making these enormous decisions that affect so many people. So I have a lot of empathy for him, but I think that the Schnee girls, women, struggle a lot with being beholden to other people and other people's visions of their destinies and their futures. And so it was really satisfying to see Winter over the course of the past couple of volumes, and this one in particular, kind of really solidify what it is actually that she believes. Because I think it's very easy, particularly when you're in an organization like the military, to get swept up in a herd mentality, or take on the beliefs of your superiors. And yeah, so it was very satisfying to me for Winter to finally realize like what in her heart of hearts like she wants and she believes in, and tell that to Ironwood.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did have some questions about just voice acting in general, and
Yeah.
we have one right here, so we might as well look at this one from the Honey Caro, which is for someone who wants to take a first step in voice acting. What was your first step?
What was my first step? Well, that's a slightly complicated question, just in the sense that I was an actor for so long before I kind of made a lateral transition into voice acting. So I always recommend to everyone that if you want to become a voice actor, 100% do whatever you can to start taking classes or workshops, whether that's traditional acting, theater. If you do have access to voice acting workshops, even if it's improv, just anything to kind of like get those muscles going. Because I feel like the arts are just like a sport, and that you do need to like practice and train and continually do so. But I guess aside from that, my first step was kind of recognizing that I wanted to do voice acting, and recognizing what type of voice acting I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to go into character-based stuff like anime dubbing, video games, etc. And so I basically shut myself in a closet for periods of time throughout the day, and got out like the little recording app that comes standard in your phone, and just thought of all the characters that I love in movies, in books, in comic books. What kind of voice would I give them? And I kind of discovered the parameters of my own voice that way. Like, how low can I go? How high can I go? What age range can I kind of play? Can I do males as well as females? And I just really familiarized myself with my own voice. And then from there, I was kind of able to identify, all right, I'm most likely going to be able to play and be cast as these couple of archetypes. And then that knowledge is so helpful in putting together a demo reel, in kind of making smart decisions when you are presented with audition opportunities, because you can't audition for every character in the series, right? Like, usually you're only allowed to audition for maybe 3 characters. So it's helpful to know where your voice kind of fits in with the archetypes of the genres that you want to go into. Yeah.
Do you ever feel limited by those archetypes?
I mean, every once in a while, I'll kind of like be like, man, I'm never gonna play like the heroine in an anime. Like, I just don't have that like sweet Toru voice,
Yeah,
you
you're the
know?
you're the tough girl.
but but in general, no, because I do feel like even within an archetype, there's so much complexity and
Yeah.
subtlety and different shades that you can bring to the character, even if it's not written into the character, you know?
Yeah, I'm always amazed when I listen to the dub track as opposed to the original Japanese language, and the actors just bring so much to the role. They feel like 2 entirely different characters so often, and that's
Mm-hmm.
it's 2 different experiences. I mean, it's a lot of fun hearing what you all do.
Mm-hmm.
I want to throw this question out there real quick because I know this is a series you like. Karis asks, do you know if Camp Camp is coming back? Because it is my comfort show.
Hi, Abby. I love you too. Sorry, I'm seeing like people pop into the feed. I unfortunately don't have any information on Camp Camp. I wish I did. It's one of my favorite shows too. Honestly, I that's another one of those shows that I will watch that show all the time, rewatch episodes like just as a fan, not even because I'm in it. So I hope that we get some updates soon. But unfortunately, I don't have any at the moment. But thank you for loving it so much.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. I saw another recent role that you took on was as Rosaria in Genshin Impact, which I thought was
Yes.
really cool because I mean, that game just keeps growing in popularity over. I mean, just so much since it's launched. You do a lot of video game roles.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a difference in the audition process for doing a video game role as opposed to an anime role?
There can be. Everything's always going to be a little bit different, but in video games, depending on the type of video game it is not uncommon to have like, they'll want to hear like dialogue lines. They'll want to hear stuff that's said in like a normal like conversation. But then you'll also have like, okay, like you're screaming across a battlefield at your opponent. And then, okay, now we want to hear a series of like, kicks and punches and like you getting kicked and punched. Whereas with anime, I find that it is less common to be asked to do that in the audition. They tend to focus a bit more on like dialogue only.
Okay, that makes sense. I do want to read the description for her character because I'm not too familiar with Rosaria, but I just thought it was really funny. Rosaria is a somewhat intimidating woman who has a rather unorthodox idea of piety. Kaya describes her as someone who is honest with herself. She dislikes topics that bore her and having to work overtime. So that sounds like a fun role.
Everything is negotiable except overtime is one of her famous lines.
Can you say it in her voice?
Yeah.
Random mode.
Everything's negotiable except overtime.
Chill. You're so good, Elizabeth. I just, it's so much fun hearing you do these roles. So, well, can you say something in Winter's voice? I promise this is the last time I'll put you on the spots, but just since there's so many Winter fans here as well.
Sure. I'm trying to think of what to say. Um, Give me
Oh,
something to say, Charles.
I'll give one to you. You just made it hard on yourself, though. We had a question about Fruits Basket, Kyo or Yuki. Can you answer Kyo or Yuki in Winter's voice?
Well, I'm not one to normally like a bad boy. I prefer order, discipline, and a good heart. But frankly, I would be happy if Weiss ended up with either of those men.
Very good. Very nice. I like putting you on the spot because I think you like being on the spot. It seems to me like, the creative juices get flowing, right? Have you ever done any improv?
Yeah, when I lived in LA, I actually took a bunch of improv classes over at the Upright Citizens Brigade. And
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, it was so much fun. And it was very valuable. But I did learn that I think, you know how like they say people have like, you have slow twitch and you have fast twitch muscles?
Uh-huh.
And like the fast twitch are what you use for like sprinting and the slow twitch are like the endurance muscles.
Mm.
I feel like that improv requires like fast twitch muscles for your brain in order to be like really good at it.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And I think that in general, I am more of a slow twitch muscle sort of person. Like when I write, when I speak with people that I care about, I do tend to do a lot more like I think about what I want to say before I say it. And the same thing with like my writing. Like I almost never go back and edit what I write. I usually, when I write, it's like, that's it. There's no first draft. That's the final edit. So I love improv. I don't think that I have the natural gifts to be like super good at it the way some people are.
That's interesting that, well, I didn't know you write. What do you write?
I haven't been writing as much in the last several years of my life
Uh-huh.
because acting, like voice acting, kind of took off for me so much. But I actually love to write poetry.
Oh, do you post it anywhere?
I haven't. I've thought about doing it. I actually had a period of time where I got really into haikus, and then another period of time where I got really into limericks. And I have posted a few of them every once in a while on social media. And I've thought about posting more. I think that it would be fun. I've never really shared a lot of my poetry with many people. It was always something that I just kind of wrote for myself and that was it. But I am proud of a lot of it, and a lot of it is pretty funny. Like I like to write like funny macabre stuff. So
That sounds really interesting. I think we'd love to see that on Twitter if you ever get around to that.
well, and I think there was
I want to
one
see
year.
Macabre Limerick by Elizabeth Maxwell. That would be that's just interesting just hearing that. So
And it's there was one Valentine's Day that I had so much fun. I actually wrote like a bunch of like roses are red type
oh,
poems
uh-huh.
from the viewpoint of a lot of my different characters. And
Oh,
that was a lot of fun.
that's so much fun. So I've got a couple more questions, but we'll be wrapping up pretty soon. So those of you who are following, if you have any questions, please throw them our way. I'll kind of try to look through these, see if there's something that she hasn't answered yet. But in the meantime, I've got a few more questions from your followers as well. Oh, so I like this one. And we talked about this once, but I honestly can't remember what you answered. And that was, are there any favorite, did you watch any anime growing up? Were there any
Hmm.
anime movies, and I remember you saying your brother was kind of, the real big influence for a lot of these things that you ended up loving.
Yeah, because I know this is very much dating myself, but I grew up in a time when Funimation and Crunchyroll did not exist. No streaming services existed. So basically, my exposure to anime for a large part of my childhood was limited to what my brother was able to borrow from the anime club and bring home in VHS form. So, for most of my childhood, I wasn't actually choosing what anime I was watching, but thankfully, my brother had really good taste.
Very good.
So, the first number of animes that I was exposed to are still some of my favorites to this day.
Well, good, good. So doing the math, that would make you 24, right? Right.
You know it.
Yeah. I am I'm turning 40 this year, and it's just
Happy birthday,
no,
Big
it's terrible.
Foro.
No, it's terrible. I feel like over the last couple of years, I feel like, oh my gosh, like it, 36, 37 didn't bother me. But as I get close to 40 and like I'm thinking about I'm thinking more about other people aging, like my
Mhm.
parents and like famous people, I'm just like people I grew up watching, like, oh wow, they're suddenly grandmothers and grandfathers, and like these are like people I had a crush on when I was a kid, and like suddenly I feel the weight of age. Um,
Yeah,
it's tough. It's not something I'm used to.
that is actually, I think, one of the trippiest things is growing up with certain actors who were adults when I was a kid. So now that I'm an adult, they're quite a bit older, and like
Mhm.
seeing them, with like the gray hair and the
Mhm.
aging and stuff, that does make me feel a bit old. Like that's a bit of a trip.
Is there anyone that you've met since you've been in the business now that you grew, similar to that you grew up watching and admiring?
I'm trying to think. I've gotten to meet some really awesome like celebrities at
Mm.
conventions where I've been a guest, but
Well, how about who is really nice that we would know?
I love Dante Bosco. He is
Oh,
like one of the sweetest, chillest, most inclusive and supportive like dudes I've ever met. He's amazing. Who else have I met that really blew me away? Alice Cooper was
oh, wow.
incredibly sweet and gracious. I met him at, oh gosh, what was it? I think it was like Planet City Comic Con a number of years ago, and he was amazing. It's also, I'm not gonna, don't ask because I won't get specific, but it's amazing how many people I thought would be super cool and were total jerks.
Yeah, yeah. That's so. Who are some of the people that you're talking about? That just give us one, just one. I mean,
No, I am not going to do that.
look,
I
you can
will
give
tell
us
you
just.
off the record of
Okay, I'm gonna
Instagram,
hold you
but
to that. I'm gonna text you later, and I want to know. And I promise I won't tell anyone. I promise I won't tell anyone. But yeah, that got me interested. So, but yeah, that's Alice Cooper. See, that's crazy. That's really
and who else? There was somebody else that stuck out too. He's Ric Flair
Rick. Woo,
was a
woo,
sweetheart.
the Nature
He
Boy.
was so nice.
I've heard that. I have actually heard that about him. That like everyone loves him. They love working with him, and maybe it's because he's really known for having like a really strong work ethic, and
Hmm.
maybe he's got the character inside rather than the character we see when he's doing wrestling. That's really interesting. You go to a lot of kind of or had been before all this with COVID, the comic book conventions, like larger kind of bigger nerd conventions rather than just specific anime conventions.
Hmm. Yeah, I do miss them. I miss like I miss I miss seeing my colleagues because, you know, VO is often such solitary work that even if I'm like starring opposite someone in an anime, I may not get to see that voice actor ever when I'm recording. So cons were a way that I was actually able to like get to see and hang out with my fellow colleagues. And then, man, nothing, I love this. I am so grateful for social media and the way that it allows us to like connect with people and communities like across the country and across the world. But nothing takes the place of that like one-on-one interaction where, you know, I can look into their eyes and like feel the, you know, joy radiating off of them and like give people hugs. Like when it's safe, everybody go get vaccinated so we can all hug. I cannot wait to see people like in person at cons again.
Have you got your vaccines yet?
I did. I was actually going to post about it after we did this, but I am fully vaccinated, baby.
All right.
Woo!
I've got my second one coming this week, and I'm ready. So did you feel okay after the second one? Did you have any issues?
I definitely didn't feel great.
Yeah.
It was like I recommend to anyone who gets like if they got a 2-shotter to like the day after you get your second shot, like don't plan anything. Like try and get off work if you can. Try and just like open up the day to have as chill a day as possible because it wasn't so much that I felt like super sick, like I had the flu, like I didn't feel nauseous or anything. I was just so tired, like so fatigued. But then, you know, after like 24 hours, it's like, bye-bye.
Well, yeah, that absolutely. Just one bad day for all the protection we're gonna get, right? So, I'm gonna end us with two questions of my own, just to be selfish. One is going. I'm sorry if this is a little all over the map, but going way back to talking about fantasy novels. I'm a big fan of a Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Have you? What are your thoughts on the series? Have you read it? Have you watched Game of Thrones?
So, for as big of a fantasy nerd as I am, you'd
Yeah.
think that I would know all about it. But to be honest, I started reading the books long before the television series came out, and I loved them. I thought that they were fascinating and so well written, but most of the time that I have to read is at night, right before I go to bed.
Yeah.
And they were like so dark and depressing that I was getting like bad dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished the first one and I started to read the second book and I was just like, I can't, like, I need a palate cleanser. I need a break from all of this like depression and darkness. And so I ended up putting it down and I never went back to it, to be honest. And I hope one day I will read the series. And nothing against the TV series. I'm sure it's amazing. But I have issues with having read a book and then watching like a movie or a TV series it's based on. Because to me, it is impossible for me not to like compare the two. And very rarely do I feel like, you know, because the TV series or the movies, they're limited. Like they can't cover everything in the book. And then I feel cheated. And so I watched the first season of Game of Thrones and I was kind of like, I'm good.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. All right. Well, the last question is, I'm sure you get asked what your favorite role is quite often. Maybe you get asked this question too, but I want to ask what's your favorite anime, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a series that you acted in, but just in general.
Oof. That's like impossible to say.
Maybe you need to go back to youth and remember when you were a 10-year-old watching, you know, all these VHS tapes from your brother. What's something that you really love or treasure? One of those series.
Well, I'll give you a two-parter answer because this is how I feel about like Disney movies. It's the same way. Like I feel like I have like a young me answer and then like an adult me answer.
Mhm.
And my young me answer is Escaflowne.
Oh, yes.
It was like I have such visceral memories of the first and second and third and fourth time I watched that series as a kid. And just the story and the emotions and the breadth of
Mm.
the feelings in that anime really affected me. And I actually have a memory of the first time that I watched it. I was so enamored with it that I watched it like early into the morning, and then at like 2 or 3 a.m. I like came downstairs and walked into my brother's room crying and just like flopped down on his bed. He was like over at his computer like playing a game or something, and he was like, "Oh, did you just finish Escaflowne?" Yeah.
That's a
um and then I almost feel sacrilegious like
oh.
trying to name a favorite anime now, but if I had to say one at this exact moment, it would probably be Fruits Basket.
That's a good political answer, but it's also just a good answer. The series is so good, and much like you, I knew it was good, but I hadn't read the manga, and as it gets deeper and deeper and further along, it's like wow, this
Mm-hmm.
is such a special series, and I understand it now.
And it's also one of those series that I think is just like perfect on every level in terms of like the animation, the acting, the story, the script, the music.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, that music like
Mhm.
haunts me.
Mhm.
Like it's so sadly beautiful.
Absolutely, and that's probably the perfect way to end our time here. Uh, thanks again for joining us, Elizabeth. You can catch Elizabeth in all sorts of things, but especially these days, Fruits Basket on Funimation. Go ahead and get your Kung Fu tea if you have one near you. You can get a free month, I believe, of Funimation as well. And please follow Elizabeth on Instagram if you're watching through you're all watching through our Instagram. If you're not following her, please follow her. Uh, are you what is your Instagram account name? It's not always Elizabeth Maxwell. Sometimes it's like
No, so Instagram is just Elizabeth Maxwell. I
yep.
guess I was the first
Got lucky
Elizabeth
on that one.
Maxwell to join Instagram.
Yeah.
And then Twitter, I'm about Elizabeth M.
There you go. And please follow her there. She's very active on Twitter as well. And thank you again for being with us today, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you for setting this up. It was so good to see you, Charles. Always a pleasure. And
Absolutely.
it was so fun to share this time with you guys. And thank you for being part of my very first Instagram Live.
Thank you, everyone. And we'll post this video all over the place so you can watch clips of it. And have a great afternoon, everyone. And have a great afternoon, Elizabeth.
Thanks. You too.
Bye,
Mwah. Bye,
guys.
guys.
Bye.